How's it going, everybody? It's Brandon. Welcome back to Marotta Media, and I am doing my second interview that I'm doing in a little over a month's time, which is crazy. I can't believe I'm already doing two. But today I'm with the directors of the documentary that I was fortunate enough to watch at the Phoenix Film Festival a few weeks ago, Going Postal, The Legacy Foretold. I'm here with Sallee and Jason Sikorsky. Guys, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, like I said, this is only my second interview ever, so I thought I'd just reach out because I saw your guys' screening, or I saw your movie at the festival, and I loved it. I really did enjoy it. So,
yeah, no, thank you for coming out to the screening. We appreciate being on your roster.
Oh yeah, because I said this in my initial review. And you guys saw it obviously, but it was a few days into the festival and I never even heard of this movie. And I was eating dinner at the restaurant just next door, and I saw some people outside the window with Postal shirts on, and there was a whole group of them. There was a bunch of people. They were handing out flyers and everything. And the shirts, for those who didn't see them, they said, "I regret nothing," or did they say, "I regret nothing"?
I regret nothing, but
okay.
Postal Force called
No regrets.
No regrets.
No regrets. Yeah. Because I saw that and I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is. And I looked it up. I was like, why don't I know about this game? Yeah, I talked about that. I'm sorry, I don't remember who I was talking to like before we got on the call. Which one of you was the head?
That was me. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I had never heard of Postal, but obviously this documentary is all about the game Postal, which came out in 1997. Very controversial game that was so controversial and violent it caught the attention of the United States Congress. But my first question for you guys is, in the Q&A in the screening that I was in, you said initially this was going to start out as just like a YouTube video essay. So when did you realize, like in the process, that this was better suited to be a full-on documentary that's 2 hours long rather than just say, like, I don't know, a half-hour video essay?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, I think we kind of initially bounced back and forth once we committed to making it a featured documentary. When we heard Mike J's story after we sat down with him for ramen, we pretty much initially knew that it was going to be a feature. Like, there just was so much content over the course of 25 years to fit into what would have been maybe an hour-long YouTube video. And for us, once we kind of digested everything, we approached Running with Scissors. We said, hey, I think this needs to be a documentary. They were super gung-ho about it. And then throughout kind of all of production, me and Jason went back and forth on, could this possibly be an episodic adventure where it's something that it's like 3 or 4 parts, but it felt more digestible in the long term to be able to just sit down and consume something in 2 hours. And it feels good. It's not something that I think stays for too long, that you can sit down, watch it, digest it, and then, presumably sit down for your next film, which is what I always wanted, is for somebody to treat this as if it was like a regular, piece of content you'd see on Amazon or Netflix, something that you just choose and click and you'd have kind of a good time for the evening. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
No, I mean, I think overall we definitely saw, I guess, our own potential in creating this into a feature documentary after we had a ton of support from the community pour in through our Indiegogo campaign. And I think from there, we constantly were trying to challenge ourselves by adding more to the project. And yeah, I mean, eventually it just bloated into, I think initially the rough cut was close to 3 hours. We were having a really hard time cutting that down under 2 hours. But at the end of the day, it's 25 years of history. It's 40 plus interviews. And it seemed like at every turn, there was another person who wanted to be a part of the project, another person that needed to be a part of the project, and something that we would discover that we didn't know before. As we were shooting it, we would discover new bits and pieces of postal history that we didn't know about, or something that Vince or Mike J would forget about. And yeah, I mean, it just kept, bloating into something a lot larger. Bloating is probably not the right word because that has a negative connotation, but it grew into something and unfurled into something a lot larger than we had initially planned. And I mean, I'm personally very happy. I'm sure Tad's very happy with the end result. So it was worth it.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have where people want to be
Oh,
involved in the film too. Like where, you know, Vince and Mike were saying, hey, that's how David Eddings got to be a part of the project. Vince reached out to us and he said, hey, my buddy David is going to be in town. And so we were gung-ho about it because, of course, we're Borderlands fans. So we go down to Tucson, and it's very casual. We're hanging out with Running with Scissors team. We're hanging out with David Eddings, and some of these people were meeting for the first time. So, you know, as fans were coming out of it, like, you know, this is really cool for us to be able to sit down and interview them and then to be a part of it, and then want to be a part of it, which is really exciting, especially for our first feature.
Yeah, definitely. And because I remember you said that the original cut was about 3 hours, and as I was watching and I could tell the movie was coming to a close, I could tell that there was definitely more to this story, but I knew you guys had to obviously whittle it down. Was there ever any moment where you thought maybe this could be like a mini series or something like that, perhaps?
Yeah, we went back and forth on that for sure. Running with Scissors was pretty partial on it potentially being a mini series too, just because I think as a society, we see a lot of that content on streaming platforms where everything is broken down into 3 or 4 parts, which is good, but in a way, I think it feels kind of like cheating your audience because you don't want to commit to like a full 2-hour film or an hour and a half film. So you have to spread it apart, which is good in some ways because you're getting more eyes on more pieces of content. And that's the Netflix model. But for us, you know, like I was saying earlier, we wanted to be like in and out over the course of 2 hours and have it feel more cinematic, like it was a film.
Yeah, I think Running with Scissors was definitely pushing for this to be sort of like a mini series, but it's easy to say make it into a mini series. It's a whole other animal to make something into a mini series. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we chose the format. We stuck to our guns. I know, like, internally, we kind of like went back and forth on the format. But at the end of the day, I think if we did go the mini series route, I think for like fans, Postal fans, they would absolutely love it because it would just go into super depth and a lot of detail that probably a general audience member wouldn't be as familiar with, but as a Postal fan, you'd appreciate. But we wanted this to be digestible, not only for Postal fans, but a general audience as well. We want your average person that can watch a documentary and just say, hey, like I picked this out of a bunch of documentaries to be able to click on it and enjoy it rather than be like, what's this like 4 or 5 part Postal mini series? And you're like 2 episodes in, and you're like, I'm over it. It's too much Postal. You know, too much Postal is great for Postal fans, but again, we wanted to appeal to multiple demographics.
You also have to have a hook, line, and sinker if you're going to do an episodic structure where you're teasing the next bit. For Postal, I don't know if you necessarily have that. Like, it works great for Netflix with like their serial killer documentaries, like the killer did this, and then, you know, they tease that at the very end, so you have to commit to watching the next episode. For us, it's like we break down the film in different chapters, as you've seen. So I could see in a way where it would work, but I don't think there's enough of a pull to bring people in to click that next episode, because it's meant to be watched in one sitting, not meant for multiple different episodes.
Yeah, definitely. Was that challenging for you guys? Because you said, obviously, for any documentary, you would want to, especially for something like Postal, you'd want to appeal to the fans. But did you ever find it challenging to also appeal to people who might not be familiar with it? Because, like I said, I was one of those people. I didn't know what Postal was, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was half the fun, is figuring out how to make this enjoyable for both Postal fans and a general audience. I think there's some things that you're just going to accept that people probably don't quite understand, and hopefully we explain it by the end by just saying, oh, it's part of the video game universe. It's an easy escape, right? Like throughout the documentary, for example, we have a urination motif. Like Vince is peeing on something, someone's peeing in something in an animation. You're just like, what's up with all this peeing? And as like a general audience member, it's like kind of awkward. And then by the end of it, you're like, oh, it's part of the game. It's a game mechanic. And you pick up on that probably like an hour in. So it probably is already like an awkward thing to think about at that point. But like little things like that, but maybe to a general audience member, it's just kind of amusing. Because that's what Postal's all about. It's about just about like a goofy chuckle or like having fun and just like having no regrets. And so hopefully that theme kind of rubs off on audience members when they watch it. And, you know, for me, I think mostly if it makes you laugh, which is my favorite part about watching the movies, watching audience members laugh and the screenings that we've had. It doesn't matter if you're young or old or what background you come from or if you're a Postal fan or not, if you're equally laughing at something goofy or funny, to me that laughter is very uniform. Anyone can enjoy it.
Definitely. And I'm happy you mentioned the animations because I thought that was a really nice touch. I like when documentaries have that sort of thing. So what inspired those animations, and were those in the plans from the very beginning?
Yeah, we had always wanted to do animations from the start, to add some production value to the film, but also to really play up the humor. And we always compare it to like a Drunk History bit where there are our interviewees are talking over these animations like the characters are talking. And Postal is a humorous game. There's so much comedy in it. So it felt like it was a good opportunity for us to have the comedy bits there. Postal Brain Damage came out around the same time when we were in production. So they had partnered with a team called Smile Studios out of Poland. And so we already knew that there were animations that were done really well for inside the Postal universe. So we reached out to Alec at Smile Studios, and they were a wonderful team to work with from the start. Jason storyboarded a lot of these animations. A lot of them came from his head. So like I give him a lot of props because animation is hard, especially because it's different than live action. You have to be a little bit more witty, but cartoon characters can be a little bit more, you know, animated, obviously, and you have to get that across. So Jason, I think, did a really good job with being able to convey that to our team in Poland. I don't know how that was for you. But.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that a lot. I mean, you definitely had a big hand in you know, reviewing them and adding your humor too. And yeah, it was a little intimidating to put them together because something might be funny to you. You know, when I was like storyboarding some of these bits, I'm like, oh, haha, that's funny. But you know, you translating it from your head to an animator drawing it could be disastrous. Yeah. And never having done animation previously, it was just like I was like a little skeptical, but I think overall it worked. I think most of the jokes land. The whole team did a really good job. And it goes from like little things too, like both me and Tad worked on the sound design together. I mean, those animations are, you know, it's kind of like Friends with a laugh track or whatever. I think animations are very similar. When you add a doink or some sort of like onomatopoeia or like a sound design, it kind of heightens that comedy. So all in all, just it's fun seeing the end product of those animations come together. And I think the most important thing too is there's a lot of holes in the story of Postal or content that was available to us. So not only was it a great piece to use to get a laugh, but it was also a great way to portray a moment that we didn't necessarily have footage for, you know, as reenactments or sort of flashbacks or whatever.
And you mentioned, what did you say, 40 plus interviews you had?
Yeah, it was over 40 interviews. Was it 40 on the dot or over 40?
We had over 40 if we're counting like the multiple interviews with Vince and Mike, because we sat down and interviewed them independently 3 or 4. So I think we interviewed Vince 5 or 6 times throughout the course of 5 years. So you can see he changes, his appearance changes. So does Mike J. Yeah. Over the course of 5 years, and then progressively the interviews start looking better and better because we were upgrading our equipment, we were getting more finances. So yeah, and then 40 plus interviews. Not all of them are in the film. We have some special features where other people are featured. Stuff that we couldn't make it into the film. A lot of that stuff that was the 3-hour cut, you know, became special features. So we have like deleted scenes. We have a whole bit about Postal Brain Damaged, which is a spin-off title that is really good. It's developed by Hyperstrange, and so we've interviewed their team. We have a little bit more kind of fleshed out about the Parents of Murdered Children segment in the film. So It's if you haven't pre-ordered your Blu-ray, definitely go to goingpostaldoc.com and little plug there. Pre-order your Blu-ray so you can see all the extra special features and interviews.
Yeah, I've actually been meaning to do that. I would like to own this on Blu-ray too, because I'm a collector. I don't know if you guys can see. I've got my whole bookcase of.
Oh, I love that.
Piggybacking off the interviews, like, did it only snowball from there? Did more and more people start to join that were bigger? Because the people that you interviewed, I was like, oh wow, they got someone like that, like Zach Ward, and because A Christmas Story is my favorite Christmas movie ever. So when Scut Farkus showed up, I'm like, okay, that is not someone I was expecting. And then obviously people like Uwe Boll, who is regarded as the worst director of all time. Those are not my words. That's the world. And like you said, people like David Eddings, who's the voice of Claptrap in Borderlands. So was there ever a time where you were like, oh my God, I can't believe we're actually interviewing someone like this for this documentary?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad you felt that way, because I had always told Tad this. I think by the end of post-production, when we'd look back, and I would just think, man, we got a lot of people and references and pop culture like tidbits in this documentary. I hope that your average fan of video games or movies can watch this and then like take something out of it and just laugh or enjoy it and be like, man, I can't believe that person was in it. So it's really cool to hear that from you, because I felt the same way too. Like objectively, as a fan of a lot of these properties and movies and video games that we kind of touch upon, I really enjoyed sitting down and speaking with John St. John. I mean, I grew up playing like Doom and Duke Nukem and those kind of like retro FPSs. So it was really cool to hear him, just kind of banter in his Duke Nukem voice and make jokes and hang out. Uwe Boll, I've watched his movies since I was a kid in middle school, and being able to sit down with him and talk to him about the Postal movie was pretty wild. And at a certain point, I was like literally watching every single movie of his. I stopped watching them like probably about 10 years ago, but I had seen most of his videography at that point, filmography at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it was really cool to be able to work with a lot of these people. And a lot of them were very kind to us and allowed us to interview them and just ask whatever you want and you shall receive. And they're open books. So it was a good time.
Yeah, we always had our core people that we knew what we wanted, which was, Uwe Boll, Zach Ward, John St. John, obviously Vince and Mike. And then all these other people started to kind of come on. And it was really cool to see everybody, like we were talking about earlier, be excited to be a part of it, to share their stories about, Vince had a lot of friends that knew him growing up, and they would subsequently come into town while we were producing the film. And that was a big part in the film. Mike Miro, who knew Vince growing up. So like, these were just extra things that we never planned on, but it ended up happening that worked out really well for the film. And so also Vince's sister, she was in town from New York on a weekend. So it ended up playing really well into the film because you're getting backstory. It's always nice to hear other people's perspectives too, not just the lead or the main voice of the film, hearing everybody else. So yeah, it was really cool that everybody else wanted to be a part of it.
Was there ever an interview that didn't go too well? You don't have to name names, but was there an interview that didn't do too well and you're like, yeah, we can't use this?
Yes and no. To be honest, I don't know about you, Tab, but I would say most of them went very well. I have one interview that I recall that didn't go great. Actually, a couple, but I think there's like a multitude of reasons why they didn't go great. And it's not necessarily because the person that we interviewed wasn't great. It's just sometimes as documentarians, sometimes you think somebody might give you a soundbite that might work narratively, and maybe it just doesn't quite work. And sometimes you just have to go out and you have to try. And I think that's kind of the name of the game with documentaries. You know that you're going to film X amount of footage and only X amount of footage is going to be used. And I think that's the case with some interviews. And you sometimes you talk for someone and it sucks because you'll like sit down and talk with somebody for like 5 minutes and you just know deep down you're like, I'm not going to use any of this. And then you have to kind of like be nice about it and finish the interview and make it feel professional. Like, you're never going to just stop and be like, all right, we're done. We're not going to get what we needed out of you. But that's part of the process. It's a good time because you never know what you're going to find. I mean, sometimes you interview people and you're like, I'm not going to get much out of this, but I'm doing it because, you know, for whatever reason. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, they said something amazing that turned into a great soundbite.
Mm-hmm. Because it certainly seemed like you guys like struck gold, because at the very beginning of the documentary, I didn't realize this at the time, but it shows you guys going into his basement, and he's got tapes. It looked like thousands of tapes of newscasts where Postal was talked about. And when you found out, wow, I'm going to be able to use things like that, like, did you? Probably a stupid question, because I'm sure you were, but were you giddy about that? Like, oh my God, we're making something really special here.
Yeah, definitely. It was like a treasure trove, Vince's basement, of things that had really never been seen before. Maybe when they originally aired on TV in 1997, 98, or Postal, 2 in 2003. But a lot of it was cool because for us, it was going to be great content for the type of film that we wanted to make. Without a lot of that, it would be difficult because you're relying on, and we have some footage in the film where it's not necessarily like to the nose B-roll, but it's just kind of, a handshake to talk about a business deal or something like that. But instead you have actual newscasts that were talking about the controversies back then. So transcoding all of that was actually a bit of a challenge, because we had it all transcoded twice, just to try to get like better enhancements, because a lot of this is 20 plus years old. So some of it didn't age well. There was like natural VHS static on some of these clips. So that's part of why we went with kind of like a 90s VHS kind of old TV aesthetic in the film that you might notice, because a lot of that old footage was burnt in with that. But it was cool. It was like 10 hours of VHS footage and old DVDs and mini DVs that we had to have transcoded here in Phoenix and in Tucson. And it was cool to be able to sit down and see all this stuff. And we get comments from fans all the time that are like, hey, where did you find that footage? Like, I want to use it for my, YouTube bit. And we're like, hey, this is because of Vince, because he did a great job of recording all of this in the 90s on a VHS tape. Like, we wouldn't be here if we didn't have that, I don't think.
Why did he record all of that stuff?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, when you're in his position and you're being talked about worldwide, I think it's just natural for you to want to be able to keep it. I don't think he ever planned on a documentary happening about his company, but
yeah, I think the majority of it ranged from like the late 90s. I mean, there's a lot of footage that he filmed, that the company filmed of themselves, probably from like the mid 90s during the production of Running with Scissors up until the late 90s and early 2000s, of when the general controversy of them arguing politicians and being all over different news stations were kind of, I guess, taking a firestorm. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting too, because Mike J always kicks himself when we talk about this. Vince had made it a habit to record so much, and Mike J, there was like a couple-year gap, and he's like, man, I wish I recorded more so I could have given you guys more B-roll and more footage to use. But we ended up getting a bunch of stuff from both of them over the course of 25 years. That was obviously enough to make a feature-length documentary and some. But yeah, no, it was great sifting through all that footage for sure.
It was also a lot of people on Running with Scissors team too that had footage from stuff that like Mike and Vince didn't. So they would say, hey, listen, reach out to this person who might have Gary Coleman footage. And that's like how we ended up getting some of that, was from, I think it was a photographer in Tucson who had done a photo shoot with Gary Coleman when he came to Tucson for Postal 2, who sent us all of like that stuff, which was great because that wasn't any of the company archives. So yeah, it was definitely a team effort to be able to get it all. And thankfully, Mike and Vince introduced us to everybody on the team at Running with Scissors, and they run worldwide. They have team members everywhere. So they helped with also our subtitles and getting the film into other languages too. So big hats off to Running with Scissors and the whole team for assisting in the project.
I totally forgot that Gary Coleman is in these games, and obviously a person like Gary Coleman would have been amazing to interview, but unfortunately he's no longer with us. Was there anyone you did want to interview that you couldn't because of reasons like that, or you wanted to interview, like, oh, I wish they were still around to do this, or someone you reached out to and they said no, sorry?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, there's a couple on the top of my head. Joe Lieberman would have been one of them. We were in production, unfortunately, when he passed away. But also Mike Huckabee, who declined to be a part of the project, to be frank, which is fine. Like, I think we have enough talking heads in the film. But to your point, yeah, Gary Coleman would have been great to hear from. Vern Troyer, who was originally Gary Coleman was originally going to play that part in the Postal movie before, unfortunately, his passing. So they replaced him with Vern Troyer, who's also unfortunately not with us. But yeah, everybody else was pretty gung-ho to be a part of it. Of course, there's some people that we wish we could have, but I think this is also kind of a good introduction for us to show to other people in the industry, if we do another film, like, hey, this is what we're capable of, and hopefully more people will sign on for future projects. I don't know if you had anybody else too.
Gene Lipkin, who was actually Vince's roommate at the time we started production, would have been a great one to interview as well. He was, I think, one of the original members of Atari, or original board members of Atari in New York. But he was in the gaming business for a long time, and was, I believe, like one of Vince's like friends and mentors. But he had like terminal cancer when we met him, and he actually couldn't speak. So we never really jumped on, kind of sad story, not to go on this tangent, but he could never speak, and we wanted to interview him, but all he could do was like write on a board. And I personally low-key knew he didn't have much time left, but by the time we were actually going to get around to the interview, he ended up passing away, which is really sad. But yeah, it's actually crazy to think how many people passed away during production. But yeah, Mike Rydell, who was Vince's partner at RSP, he would have been great to interview, but we couldn't get a hold of him, unfortunately. But all in all, you can't get them all, but and sometimes you can tell the story without them. But it would be nice for people to be able to speak on behalf of themselves. But it's always an interesting perspective when you're referenced and you kind of have like I guess an angle of how they were a part of the story without them being there too.
Yeah, you mentioned production was 5 years long. When did it begin, and when did it officially wrap? Because I remember towards the end of the doc, you guys were at some expo in Boston, and I remember it said, and this just shows like that I was thinking the same thing as you guys, I guess. It said March 2020, and I was like, oh, so this was like 2 weeks or so before the world went to hell. And I think it even just said 2 weeks before lockdown or something like that. So how long was the production process, and was it shut down during COVID, or were you doing more in between?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so that montage that we have in the very end of the film, which is for PAX East, we had done that pretty early on, actually, only a couple months after we started production. That was our first big travel shoot with our crew. And it's so funny because we had planned to do all of these massive interviews, like in person, me and Jason, to travel around the world to do them. And then COVID happens, and we had to take a hiatus and kind of like regroup and figure out how we're going to do all these. So we found a core team of people throughout each different continent, each country, that could facilitate these interviews for us remotely. So we started September. We met Mike J September, I think, 2019. Started our cameras rolling October of 2019, and then finished our last interview, I believe, in was it August or September of 2024?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So
did some pickups then, right?
Yeah, so it was like to the finish line. So we were like shooting, editing. But a big chunk of like those interviews were done like throughout COVID, where we would hire remote operators, or we would do some of them ourselves. Like Corey Cruz, we did during COVID. who's the voice of the Postal dude in Postal 3. And yeah, so it definitely kind of made us realize, but for me, I think I was kind of grateful because it taught us another way of filmmaking. Like, you don't have to be boots on the ground there in person. You can do things remotely, and it's in a way more affordable too, because you're not having to fly out an entire crew out to a remote location who've never been there before, and you have to like pay for hotels, pay for commuting. And instead you're hiring a local who knows the area, who has a, maybe a flat rate. They've already got their gear. And then you tell them that, we're making this documentary, and everybody was super excited to be a part of it. You just have to find the right people that are reliable, that have the right camera equipment, that like know what they're doing. And of course we had our issues here or there, but for the most part, everybody came together really well. So we've got a really nice like core group of people, if we do another film, that we can rely on. And I think I encourage it, like, and it's another way to say that you don't have to be, again, be boots on the ground. Like, you can hire out people. You don't think you have to do everything yourself. And we certainly wouldn't be here if we didn't have a full group of people that helped us get here.
Well, it was definitely more convenient, I'm sure, to hire people like that. But was there a part of you that was disappointed? You're like, I was kind of looking forward to, going to this place, even just for a little bit.
I think the idea, it's like very romanticized to like travel the world and film, but then you start doing the math and you're like, okay, I can't afford this. So when we broke it down, we realized we could only go to like a couple places. So we spent the money where we could, that made the most sense, where we got the most bang for our buck. We definitely wish we could have traveled to like a Poland or a Germany or a Russia and be able to explore, and as well as like, film the movie. But I think like traveling to Boston for PAX East was definitely a big one for us. Going to LA and filming like 4 interviews.
Yeah, Carter Cruz, John St. John.
Yeah, Larry Thomas, Chris Coppola. And Zach Ward, and knocking all those out in one trip was definitely worthwhile. We went to Seattle as well to film Stephen Kent, which is our film historian, and he was ended up being a big part of the movie. And we were hanging out at GameWorks, which was really cool before it shut down. I guess it's reopened now. So we were very selective of what made sense. So we got some trips out of it.
We also had a very limited budget too. Like,
I'm sure.
At the very end of the film, we had probably close to 200,000 spent on making it, which is pretty low for a film, especially this caliber. So just traveling was, it would have been limited.
People keep saying that it's not a lot of movie for a documentary, and then I'm just like, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
But yeah, no, for sure, it's definitely considered like ultra low budget, but we made it work.
I would be remiss, because this is a documentary about video games. It only seems obvious to ask, like, what is your guys' favorite video game? And was there a video game that ever inspired you to get into filmmaking?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I really like that question, but I would say, at least personally, I think it almost like was the other way around in some ways. It's because I think like as a 90s kid born in 91, growing up playing like Nintendo and Super Nintendo, and then like bleeding over to PlayStation, a lot of games didn't have the best storytelling at that time. And it was like watching movies made me at least perceive games more imaginatively. But like, I would say probably by the late 90s and early 2000s, when you start getting games that had like absolutely amazing like stories and graphics to tell these stories. For me, it was Blizzard games easily. The StarCrafts and Warcrafts just blew my mind. Watching like orcs and humans like fight each other, and then you control these armies to battle it out. Diablo was a big one for me. I think Blizzard probably broke my brain as a kid just by the sheer cinematics, and that probably was like the first time I realized that games could be like movies. But yeah, God of War was a big one for me in terms of like being influential and like how you can tell a great story through a video game. Half-Life, I can go on. How about you?
Yeah, my video games that I'm a big fan of, my top three are Super Mario 64, Red Dead 1, and this.
Wait, can I name the third one? Wait, it might
You'll
not
never
be it.
guess it.
No?
You'll never
I was going to
guess
say
it.
Indiana Jones, The Great Circle.
That is up there. It's top 10.
Really?
Great game. The third one is this weird Nintendo game called WarioWare Mega Micro Games. It was like Game Boy Advance game. I love it because I have a lot of nostalgia for it. It's a stupid like game where it's just a bunch of micro games. So
Yeah.
none of those have any correlation to like, I guess, cinematics minus Red Dead, which at the time was a really, really cinematic game. I'm sure I saw parallels there, but I was always like gung-ho about filmmaking because I was a fan of movies too. Like I have as big of a movie collection as I do a video game collection. So I never really thought I would get inspiration from a video game to make a movie. That's why I kind of wanted to when I approached Jason and I told him I wanted to kind of marry the two because we both were big gamers and we lived together and we were working on another TV show at the time. And so I came to him with the idea of like doing something in the gaming space, but for film and television. And that's just kind of how this all started. But yeah.
You know, actually, I was just thinking about this the other day. I was watching this like video on Medal of Honor, and I forgot how mind blown I was when I was playing Allied Assault. And that was like one of the first times I realized that games could be like movies as well. Another moment, because I love Saving Private Ryan. So playing Allied Assault, I'm like, I can be in Saving Private Ryan. But yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question. It's interesting. I'm like going through my head trying to think of all the times like I had any of those like crossover moments.
I think we're finding games nowadays to be more cinematic and like more like a movie than like when me and Jason grew up. Because like our favorite console is the Dreamcast, so ain't nobody getting tired to make a movie with the Dreamcast.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like games that are mindless too, and I think that's part of the appeal for Postal. You know, speaking of, it's just like a mindless sandbox, and you make what you want out of it. And I actually really enjoyed playing Postal 2 for that reason. I surprisingly thought it was a great game. I didn't know what to expect because I didn't play it prior to shooting this documentary. But yeah, just like going around and like knocking people's heads off and shooting stuff, that's always a good time too.
Don't mean to get like too deep or like controversial with this next question, but obviously like all of us here are fans of video games just in general, including violent ones. So, and this is covered in the documentary. Do you guys think that violent video games like Postal have a place in society?
Want to go for it?
Yeah, sure. Yes, definitely. I think all forms of art should exist as long as you're not hurting other people. Now, does it cause you to hurt other people? I think is more of the deeper question that we try to address. I don't think necessarily so. I think people that might be susceptible to mental illness, unfortunately, are prone to maybe commit acts of violence, not just solely from playing violent video games. I think it's a multitude of factors that include violent video games, perhaps. But I think violent media is probably one aspect. I think pornography, internet, cursing, whatever else that can be perceived as sort of like a negative press on someone's brain or mental capacity. I think the totality of it can definitely be hard for some people to deal with. And sometimes people use it as an escape. So every human's different. I think that's kind of the interesting thing about human beings. We all perceive something different. Someone can watch a violent movie and be completely grossed out, while someone else can watch it and be absolutely drawn in. But yeah, I mean, it's a very complex question. For me, I think it's a good product to use as a conversational piece, right? Like, I don't think any parent should necessarily give their kid Postal and be like, go play this game. But if their kid seeks it out and they say, oh, I found this game that I really want to play, then I think that becomes a conversational point as to why do you want to play this and what makes you enjoy it. And, by the way, this is not real. It's a depiction of real life, but understand the difference. I think I feel like I'm learning a lot as maybe a potential future parent. I think all humans should think about these things and learn how to pass on the baton to another human being. So yeah, I mean, it's a good conversation to have. I would say we're artists, right? We're creators. So I never want to tell someone how to do their art and why or why not. I think everyone should have the freedom to do so. Now, if you're faced with backlash and repercussions because you made something that made somebody feel a way, I think that it's your job as an artist to handle that as an adult or as a mature human being. And I think, at times Vince and Mike J stuck their neck out on purpose and asked for it. And other times I think it came to them. How they dealt with it, I think they handled it very well. I think sometimes they were pushing the envelope on purpose for the controversy and attention. And I think other times they weren't expecting it. So it just comes with the territory when you make art like that. So just expect to handle it accordingly.
You have anything to add?
No, I mean, I think Jason answered it really well. I think the only thing that I would add very briefly here is Postal 1 is tame compared to games that are coming out today. I mean, generally, even Postal 4, which is the latest game in the franchise, is very tame. This disembodiment is comical. Like Postal 4 is very humorous, and you find a lot of stuff that's like very, very violent, very rough to I guess like a young person's mind, especially compared to where we were at in the late 90s. Like Postal 1 would probably be rated, T these days, maybe even that. Like it's just very tame compared to, obviously, games like Manhunt and new games now. Like I just finished Assassin's Creed, and it's pretty violent. Like you can disembody heads, you can cut off limbs. Like you couldn't really do that back in the, I guess, late 90s until Mortal Kombat really came out. So, but now graphics are a lot better. But I don't think it's just video games either. It's also music, it's television, it's movies, and a big part of it is how you grow up. It's not just like you can't blame the parents. Like your kid's gonna play whatever he wants, no matter how he finds it. Like if he wants to play Postal, he's gonna go over to his friend's house and he's gonna play it. It's your job as a parent to make sure you're just doing your due diligence and keeping your eye on them, but also informing them. And we've chatted with a lot of Postal fans before, and they've always, said like, Postal helped me. So it can also be on the other end, it can help people. It can help them get through like hard times of their lives and get over traumatic events. So I've seen that more than any any evil that Postal could bring is bringing the community together. And that's all I'd have to add.
Switching gears from that really heavy topic about violent video games place in society, do you, on the same lines of your favorite video game, because I asked this in my first interview, which was also about a documentary, do you guys have a favorite documentary? And did you have any documentary in mind while you were making Going Postal and saying, I want it to look like this?
I think we both know which one we're in.
Yeah. You want to start with that one?
Yeah. It's a documentary series called Pepsi, Where's My Jet on Netflix. I think both me and Tad watched it separately, and we just constantly referred to the documentary. We'd watch it and we'd pause it and we'd be like, look at this or look at that or look at this reference. And that was a big inspiration for us. Just the sheer amount of nostalgia, especially from the era it was based around, down to like the I guess the buddy relationship between the younger character and the older character, and that's kind of what we saw in Mike J and Vince. So there was like a lot of parallels. But yeah, I mean, that was a great documentary that I think I still to this day always like think about randomly. I need to rewatch it soon.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we would always go back and forth when we were watching films on Netflix or documentaries and find like bits and pieces that we wanted to use, or like camera angles, when we were in production. So I think we drew a lot of inspiration from a lot of other documentaries. For me, my personal favorite documentary is Icarus. I just love how like that story changed halfway through, or like pretty early on, where it was supposed to be this like kind of story about this, Russian doping scandal, and then the scientist has to live with the actual documentarian. So I like films and stories like that, because things change and happen in real time while you're filming it. You just happen to be there.
Yeah, talk about right place, right time. That's crazy. Yeah. He unveiled a giant like scandal, right? Like,
right.
Without even realizing that he was. Yeah, that's a really good documentary, Icarus.
How about you? What's your favorite documentary?
Man, besides Pepsi, Where's My Jet? I mean, geez. Roadrunner was a great one about Anthony Bourdain. I remember watching that on the airplane, just like holding back tears. Anthony Bourdain's always been like a huge inspiration for me, including other like documentary projects I've worked on. I love traveling, and I love just like his I guess like his angle and how he thinks about life. Very like I don't think I need to like explain too much about Anthony Bourdain, but yeah, he's great. And Roadrunner was a great documentary about him.
Yeah, I have not seen any of those, unfortunately. I wanted to watch Roadrunner a few years ago. That was in my watch list, and I just never got around to it.
Yeah, no, it's really great. Sorry, I have one more. The King of Kong was awesome.
Yes, I watched that in college. I love that documentary.
Yeah, that really, that to me showed me the first time that a documentary about a video game subject could be like well done and interesting. Because before then, I don't think I saw many good ones, and that one was fantastic. Indie Game is another really good one too, that I really enjoyed.
I remember you guys saying that you're both graduates of the University of Arizona, and news to me, but I remember it was news to you guys too. Apparently the game developer Running with Scissors was based in Tucson, and you said this is your first feature film. So was there a full circle moment? You're like, wow, we're gonna go back to Tucson to make our first feature?
Yeah, I mean, I think so we met Vince and Mike J while we were living in Tucson at the time. And I mean, the stars definitely aligned. I mean, we conceptualized doing something like this, and then just so happened to meet the only video game developer in the region, and ended up meeting a ton of other people through our networks through them, and it just worked out. It was like almost too convenient. I think most people are like, oh, you should be in LA if you're gonna like make a movie, blah 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 blah, and we were just roommates in Tucson, and it just kind of like grew into something that we never thought it would. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we were like right down the street from their office too, which is funny.
Oh, wow.
Like, not too far away. And so like when Jason told me, like, I know somebody that knows Mike J, and he told me all about Postal. Like I had heard of it because I had seen the movie when I was growing up, but I had to be refreshed about it. And so yeah, it was kind of crazy how convenient it was. But we moved to Phoenix just because of other opportunities, and but it was nice because we get to go down to Tucson, and I have roots in Tucson. I have family in Tucson, and so getting to go back to the city is also amazing. And so the film is also a little bit of a shout out to Tucson in a way, because I don't think Tucson gets enough love, and so we're happy to be able to represent Tucson in the film for sure.
But I do really respect that you guys are doing that, because I've kind of had the same, what's the word, motivations in life to do stuff like that, because I was a film major in college too, but it was never my goal to go to LA and make movies, because I'm not a fan of Los Angeles. I just don't think it's a very good place, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, it made me happy to see people like filming just in Arizona as a whole. So and I really respected that you guys did that, and
thank you.
Hopefully it inspires other people to do things like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's a way to do something if you just put your mind to it, and 5 years of blood, sweat, and tears. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a movie. I hope that, like you said, I appreciate that. It means a lot. I hope we inspire people to finish that painting that they were thinking about doing, or start drawing that image in their head that they've been wanting to get out, or play that video game they've been meaning to finish. I don't know what it is. It could be as small as that or as big as making a movie. But I think at the end of the day, you want to create art, go out and do it. You got to start somewhere.
So I know obviously you guys were at Phoenix Film Fest. Well, and like, how did Phoenix Film Fest go? And I know you guys were at the Arizona International Film Fest in Tucson. So where's Going Postal headed next?
So right now we're waiting on other film festivals. I believe we're going to be at the very end of this month. We're doing a screening at the University of Arizona for free to students. So
cool.
if you're watching this and you're a student at the U of A, come on by. We're going to be there April 29th at 6:30 at the theater inside the Student Union. And then other film festivals are coming up. So it's quite possible that we'll be at the Nogales Film Festival also at the very end of the month. It's playing in Nogales on the border wall. And then from there, we have a slur of other film festivals that we're going to be, that we're waiting on seeing if we're going to be attending. And they span throughout the world. But pretty soon, hopefully the film will have a life on digital platforms, which we're just waiting to make an announcement. We're waiting for an official date from our partners so we can make that announcement. And then we're going to be doing the physical Blu-ray very soon too. So we're just, again, waiting on that. Everything is pretty close to being done. So we're anxious to get it out because we're getting questions and we have people who are anxious too. And trust us, we want the film to be out there. So we're just kind of at a waiting game, hearing from our partners about what the QC process looks like. But it should be really soon, like sooner than I think a lot of people are expecting. So you can see Going Postal from the comfort of your own home, pretty soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully the whole world gets to watch it, and please watch it.
Please.
But how was the starving artists?
Exactly.
But how was your guys' overall experience at the Phoenix Film Fest?
Oh, it was amazing. It was so much fun. I personally wasn't expecting the festival to be I guess that big in size and scope for our premiere. There's a lot of seats to fill, beautiful theater. Everyone was really cool that we spoke with. I think you rubbed a lot more elbows than I did in general at the film festival, but it was really awesome. And being able to I was eating dinner next to Oliver Stone, which I will remember for the rest of my life. That was cool. It was a great time. It was a great experience. Just again, being able to sell out a theater on a Saturday evening with like Miami's saying, a lot of us screenings are filled with friends and family, and you try to come out and support, and that's amazing, and that feels really good. And I've been there with just that, and I've been there with nobody, but this is like the first time I've been there with friends and family, and plus a bunch of people I had no idea who they were. Like, who the heck are all these people? And it was like the best feeling because they showed up to watch the movie because they were Postal fans or saw our ads or whatever the case was. So that was awesome.
Yeah, and to be able to sell out the same time in the theater adjacent.
It
was Stone.
Yeah, it was against
Platoon.
Yeah,
at the same time. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because
we wanted to go.
I was thinking, I was like, why didn't I go to that Saturday screening? It's because I was in the Platoon screening. So, yeah.
Well, fair enough. But it's really cool to say both the screenings sold out. That was really cool. And the Wednesday night screening was great too. I think we did like 60%. Like at like 7 o'clock, which is like people are like just getting off work and like having to run to the theater. So it felt really nice to have like well over half the theater with people watching this movie and supporting us on a Wednesday night.
Yeah, definitely the best festival experience we've had so far. Like, we've done some bad ones and then there are some good ones. So, we really hope to, whatever film we do next, definitely keep Phoenix Film Festival on our radar.
I guess to end it off, I know you said you're waiting to hear back for a release on this really soon. Any idea of when you think something like that might happen?
Yeah, we're aiming for spring, which is coming up. May is technically the last month of spring, so somewhere around May.
Yeah.
we're hoping mid to late May is what we're looking at.
Yeah, good. And if I see it or like I hear that it's available, I'll definitely have to put the word out too, because I know a lot of people who like documentaries, and I like promoting especially smaller documentaries like this. So
thank you. That means a lot. And at the end of the day, I hope that ends up being a big factor in the success of this documentary, is people watch it and they enjoy it and they share it with others. And I think that's one beautiful thing about the postal community. When they like something, they go out and they share it. I can't tell you how many times we like interview a fan, or we're like hanging out with a fan. They're like, yeah, I bought like the Postal game 5 times for my friends just because I wanted them to play it. So I hope they feel the same way about the documentary. Like, I bought like 20 Blu-rays so I could give it to my friends.
Granted, Postal was on sale probably for like $2.99 that they shared it with their friends.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
Yeah, no, that's why we did a Blu-ray physical release too. Like we wanted to have a tangible version that Postal fans could hold, because they're collectors and we're collectors ourselves. So, and very few documentaries are produced on physical media, because I'm a preservationist. So I definitely would like to see more movies come out. But unfortunately we're in a digital landscape. So that's why we're doing both. But the Blu-ray does have a lot of special features. It's like 7 hours of content if you buy the Blu-ray. So you're getting your bang for your buck if you purchase it with a really good high quality BD50, which is a 50 gigabyte Blu-ray. So
sounds fancy.
Yeah. So pick up your Blu-ray. We still have pre-orders left on goingpostaldoc.com.
that is basically all I had. So again, Tad, Jason, thank you so much for doing this. And hopefully we could talk again soon. And I wish you guys luck on your festival circuit and whatever's next for you.
Thanks, Brandon. Much appreciated, dude.
Thank you so much for having us, man. Really appreciate talking to you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks.